I'm a very strong pro-defense Reagan Republican. I believe that having a strong, well-equipped military deters threats from our adversaries, leads to a more peaceful world, and actually makes us spend less in the long run because we won't be dragged in to various conflicts. But having said that, the Pentagon is not even close to being an efficient organization. It's a huge bureaucracy. We do have too many civilian employees working in the Pentagon. We have too many military staff officers working in the Pentagon. The procurement system is very much outdated. There is a lot of waste. I've joined an effort to audit the Pentagon just so we know what is going on and that we're better able to address efficiencies. I think you can save billions and billions of dollars if you've done it. Interestingly, the Pentagon was supposed to be audited in 1990. That was the law. It said this must happen, and it just never happened. So yet another instance where Congress passes a law and then nobody in the governing class up here sees fit to abide by it. But I think it would be good for taxpayers, but I also think it would be good for the Defense Department, because you have way more credibility when you're coming to Congress saying we need X amount of dollars for this weapon system if you have a good track record of using taxpayer money wisely. So I appreciate that question. I'll tell you, you talk to anybody on the street, I think they would agree with exactly what you said. I agree with what you said. When you get up here, it's a whole new world in terms of how people are able to spend money. They have an incessant desire to do it. And so something like a pork project, that may be something that there are members of Congress who really, really want that, to be able to funnel that money somewhere. And so some people really, really want it. And what ends up happening is, because there's a small number of people who want something very intensely, that sometimes trumps the average taxpayer who just has a generalized belief in fiscal responsibility. It's very unfortunate, but it's true. I'll give you an example. We voted during the whole Farm Bill votes earlier this year to eliminate funding millions of dollars of taxpayer money going to prop up a sheep shearing school. Sheep shearing. You would think, why would taxpayers be wanting to spend money on that? But this was actually a very controversial vote. We were barely able to get enough votes in the House to stop taxpayer money going for sheep shearing. But there were a lot of other things that we tried to do that did not get even close to a majority of members of Congress on record to say that we don't need to spend money in these situations. And then some of the things you mentioned, such as the federal employees, they're a very powerful constituency now, and you have some members of Congress, particularly in Maryland and Virginia, that have a large number of Washington federal employees in their districts, and they are very, very protective, not only of increasing pay and benefits for those individuals, but in trying to add new employees to all these agencies to increase the strength of those public employee unions. I don't think that's the purpose of government. We hire people to serve a certain function, but you don't hire federal employees just for the sake of having a bigger federal workforce and having a situation where you have more voting blocks in some of these districts. So I agree with you, that's not the right way to go. So it's a great question, but politics, you have a lot of people who want to be able to divert this money to areas where they can get an immediate political benefit. That's not the way it should be. That's not how all members are, but there's still enough people here that some of those common sense things that you've talked about do not yet command a majority of the House of Representatives, and certainly not a majority of the United States Senate. So it's interesting, every constitutional amendment that we've done in our history has passed the House and Senate here in Washington with 2/3 as required, and then it goes to the states and requires 3/4 of the states to ratify the amendment on a simple majority vote. So all 27 amendments we have gone through that process. Article 5 of the Constitution, as you suggest, does have that process in a different process, one in which the states can propose amendments to the Constitution themselves, ratify it themselves, and basically keep the federal government completely out of it. And the reason why the Founding Fathers put that there, because they knew that you could have a governing class in Washington that would entrench itself and would not be amenable to common sense reforms. I think the best example I can think of right now is term limits. 80% of the American people support term limits. We need, under current law, to have a constitutional amendment to have term limits for members of the House and Senate. Yet members of the House and Senate up here, very few of them would be willing to term limit themselves. So that's an example where if you did an Article 5 amendment process through the states, I think you'd pass term limits in a New York minute. So I would certainly be supportive of trying to push a term limits amendment through the states, allow the states to amend that themselves, ratify it themselves, and then people in Washington would have to deal with it. And I think that that would be a great blow to the governing class to be able to go around them and institute reforms that they're going to be forced to abide by. So I appreciate the question. Thank you very much.